I forgot to bring my servant with the peacock fan with me. What? No, please don't do that. That's all I need, you know. Videos of me all over the internet with somebody fanning me with a peacock. All right. We will survive. Yes. So thank you very much. This is our final class in Career Dharma. And we're going to be going over all 9 principles. So we did this the other morning. We're going to do it again. And we'll spend more time on what we didn't do in the intensive classes. So again, if you would like more information, if you'd like information when we have our full online course, when we have our audiobook and our workbook, those are the 3 things that are in progress. You can sign up there. Or you can just capture it with this QR code. Either way, it'll work. All right, I'd like you to imagine work where your daily life includes the things you've always dreamed of doing, where you love the work you're doing, what you're producing, and how you're making a meaningful contribution, that you have the type of prosperity that enriches you and that you joyfully share with others. And to imagine that the whole world is full of people working like that. So we have 4 main areas: identifying our ideal career field and prosperity type, learning the secrets of making our work deeply meaningful, progressing to dharmic mastery, and then looking at the whole system for peace and prosperity. And here are our 9 principles, if you could read them with me. Connecting our nature with our livelihood, advancing through life while nourishing our nature, extending our prosperity to others, ethical and meaningful work of value, delight in cherishing our prosperity and field of work, having celebrations of the sacred in our life and work, above the shades of ego, maintaining societal balance, cooperation between the fields, and competition within the fields, and all-inclusive sustainable prosperity. Hey, Nandu, is this crooked just because of the wind, or it's just the wind? It's not a keystone thing. Okay, well, wind is worth it, yes? I think so. All right, and we put these 9 principles together, and they spell Career Dharma. Whoa, whoa. Okay, so the first principle, we're looking first at the area of identifying our prosperity type and career field. And principle 1 is connecting our nature with our livelihood. So the concept that the way we're meant to maintain ourselves is by the expression of ourselves. We're meant to maintain ourselves by being ourselves, by having the best expression of ourselves. So first we're going to look at the prosperity types. So this is the question I asked the other day again. Do you know of anyone, heard of anyone, ever met anyone that didn't have a lot of money but had a rich, satisfying life? How many of you have ever heard of anyone or met anybody like that? All right. And how many of you have ever met anyone, heard of anyone who had a lot of money and a poor, unsatisfying life? Any of you ever heard of such a person, right? All right. So often we think that work is just for money and I can do work that I don't like, that doesn't enrich me, and yet if I make enough money that's going to be okay. But it's just not the way we're supposed to function. So the Bhagavad Purana teaches us about 6 ways of feeling rich. These are the 6 prosperity types. Yes? And most of us have 2 or maybe 3 of these types that are particularly important to us. That if we don't have them in our life through our work, we're going to feel impoverished. And then we usually have some that either we don't want in our work or really are not very important to us. So we're not going to take as much time as we took in the in-depth class on this, but we'll go through this rather quickly. But for each of them, I'm going to ask you to think about when you have had this in your life and when you haven't had it in your life as part of your work, and how do you feel in each circumstance. Now, when I'm going to ask you how do you feel, I don't just mean emotionally, but like what happens in your life. Because if there's some sort of nourishment that we really need, we're going to tend to try to get it one way or another. So it's not just, do I feel frustrated? Do I feel satisfied? But also, do I try to add that to my life in some way if it's not present in my work? Or if it's in my work and I don't like it, do I try to avoid it? So the first one is Aishvarya, which comes from the Sanskrit word Ishwara, which means controller. I think I am going to go with that cushion on the floor. Can I switch? No. Oh, a chair like that has no handles? Yeah, I think I'll just go to the floor. I've been sitting on the floor my whole life. That's all right. I give up. But thank you. Appreciate you making an effort. Take this. No, I don't. One is fine. Oh, that's so much better. Oh my gosh. Wow. That was extremely uncomfortable. Okay. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Where is she? Thank you, Emerald, for giving me that option. Yes, I feel sane. All right. So the first is Aishvarya, which has to do with Ishwara. And this can be organizational leadership, basically where someone has a position of administration, where you actually have people that are working under you, that you're managing, that you're organizing. It can also have to do with money and luxury, which gives you a sense of control. But I think the main point here is those of us who are really nourished by having some sort of administrative position. And I know many people like that, where they really enjoy doing management and doing leadership and doing admin, getting people in the right place, having them work with each other, getting projects done. And there are other people that they can do it or not do it. And other people really don't like this. There are many people that, I was talking to one of them recently that said, as soon as I'm in an administrative management position, I can't sleep at night, and I can't digest my food. And other people, it's the opposite. If they don't have this kind of position, they'll try to take it. They'll move into some position of leadership. And this is, as I mentioned in the in-depth class, this is something that I fought in myself for years. That for years I tried to not lead. And it was only really when someone did one of these personality assessments on me and said, you cannot not lead, that I went, okay, I guess I give up. I guess this is what I'm meant to do. And I find that when I'm in that kind of a situation, I feel much more energized. So I'd like you to think about when you've had Aishvarya as part of your work and when you haven't had it. And what are the consequences? How do you feel? What are the consequences when you have it? What are the consequences? How do you feel when you don't have it? I would just like to remind everybody that there's leaders in all 4 fields. So I often get people assuming that those who are energized by Aishwarya are necessarily in the field of government. That is not the case. So we have people in administrative managerial positions in the field of artistry, in the field of resources, in the field of government, and in the field of ideas. All right, the next is Gyan. So Gyan is knowledge. So some of us really want work that kind of forces us to keep learning, where learning and gaining knowledge is part of the job. You can't even do it properly without continually learning. So there are many of us who really feel enriched like this. We want some kind of work that's where we're constantly learning. Other people really don't care about this so much, and some people actively don't like it. Right? There's some people who say, look, I've already gone to school, I've learned what I needed to learn, and now I just want to do my work, and I don't want to constantly having to be doing research and study and taking courses and things like this. So I'd like you to think about when Gyan has been part of your work, when it hasn't been, how do you feel, and what happens in your life when you have it and when you don't have it. So there's a lot of people that want jobs that involve a lot of physicality. They like jobs where they're very physically active, and where, you know, they don't need to have a separate gym membership because they're getting that workout as part of their work. And people who really want virya as part of their work are usually not happy if they have some kind of sedentary job. Now, virya can mean not only work that has a large physical element, but it can also mean any kind of work that's enriching you in terms of your health. So, for example, as I mentioned the other day, I know someone who runs an Ayurvedic restaurant, and she also eats Ayurvedic food because she runs the Ayurvedic restaurant. You can have careers that help other people be healthy, but don't necessarily help you be healthy. So right now we're looking at what your work provides for you. Some people are just like, they don't really care if this is part of their work or not. For other people, they actively don't want it as part of their work. They would rather have their gym membership separately, and they would rather do things to keep up their health on their own and not have it as a forced part of their work. So if you can think of when you've had virya as an integral part of your work, when you haven't had it, how do you feel, or what's your response? What happens in your life when you have it, and what happens when you don't have it? The next is Shri. So there's different aspects to Shri. Shri basically means sparkly splendidness. And there's visual Shri, if you do a lot of work that brings visual beauty into your life. There's auditory Shri, if your work involves a lot of auditory beauty. Maybe you work a lot with music. Olfactory Shri, so people who work with oils and perfumes and incense and flowers. There's the Shri, or the beauty of nature, people who have jobs that put them in touch with the beauty of nature. And there's also Shri can refer to a different kind of leadership than Aishwarya. It can refer to charismatic leadership. So you can have charismatic leadership in your work without any administrative position, and you can have administrative positions without being a charismatic leader. So those two things don't necessarily go together. But if you can think of any time you had work with any of those aspects of Shri, charismatic leadership, visual beauty, auditory beauty, olfactory beauty, beauty of nature, maybe some combination of those. And how do you feel, or what happens in your life when you have that? And how do you feel, and what are the results when you don't have it? Then there's yasha. Yasha means fame, but this is not the fame of like you have a lot of followers. That would be Shri. Yasha is actually a person who's the child of Kirti and Dharma. Kirti means to talk about. Dharma means what's authentic, what's good, what's valuable. So yasha means people are talking about you because you've done something valuable. And when you have yasha in your work, that implies that your work involves some sort of community. You're working with teams or with community. And the community is a supportive one. It's one that's acknowledging its members and giving admiration and recognition to its members, not just getting the job done. So there are many people for whom yasha is essential. There's many people who, they don't really work well in just a room by themselves without any acknowledgement. And there's other people for whom yasha is annoying, where they want to work in a room by themselves without any acknowledgement. Right? So for many people this is essential. For some people it's just like, whatever, it's a meh. And for other people, they don't particularly want this as part of their work. So if you can think again, when you've had yasha as part of your work, when you haven't had it, what are the results in your life, and how do you feel when you have it? And how do you feel, and what are the results when you don't have it? And then we have vairagya. So people think of vairagya as anti-prosperity, but it actually is another way of feeling rich. Ragya means attachment, vai means without. So vairagya has to do with equanimity and freedom. It can mean jobs where you have a flexible schedule, where you do a lot of travel, where you're able to live a very minimalist lifestyle. Like I was reading about one man who really appreciated that he could ride a bicycle to work. Right? And then he got another job where they said, well, if you're just riding a bicycle to work, it doesn't look good for our company. We want you to drive a car to work. Where you can live some kind of minimalist lifestyle, or where you're able to have work that helps you be detached from the general comings and goings of life, or the emotional side of life, or the social side of life. So for a lot of people, vairagya is very important to them in their work. It's a very important prosperity. There are other people who are kind of neutral about it, and other people really don't like it. There's other people who are much more interested in security and regulation and having more comforts in life, or being more involved with the social and emotional part of life. So if you can think about when you've had vairagya as part of your work, when you haven't had it, how do you feel when you have it? And what happens in your life? And how do you feel when you don't have it? So we have an exercise in the book in Appendix A, where you look at people with different careers and you assess what kind of prosperity types they're getting in their life. That's on page 499. Then on page 515, we have the answers with explanations. And so one person told me, well, I read it and then it just went right to the answers. And I said, no, try to figure it out yourself and then look at the answers to check and get some feedback. Yes, and again, we're not looking at what types of prosperity your work is giving to others. That is another category. But we're looking right here at what kinds of prosperity your work is giving to you. And it's very helpful, instead of looking just at, the details of a career, what work you're doing, to look at what types of prosperity that work is giving you. And you can often move from one job to another if circumstances are such, but keep your prosperity types and your field of work. Now, there's a lot of people that think, well, as long as I'm making money, then I can use the money to buy my prosperity type. But that doesn't work very well. First of all, that means that all the time you're at work, you're feeling poor and impoverished. And work takes 8 to 10 hours a day. You know, it's not like you're going to have a whole lot of time in the afternoons and on the weekends to actually enjoy your prosperity type separate from work. And part of that time in the evenings and weekends you have to spend just living. Yes? But also, it's not so easy to exchange one prosperity type for another. Like we were talking about exchanging currency. If I change US dollars to Australian dollars and back to US dollars, I will lose. Right? So if you think, well, I'm going to get one prosperity type and I'll exchange it for another, it's not really going to work very well. All right, now we're going to look at bringing together our nature and our livelihood in terms of the 4 fields of work. And the essential part here is in the second line, guna karma, that there should be a match between our temperament and our work. And I had someone arguing with me that's saying, well, you know, you can have one temperament and do another kind of work. I said, but the whole idea of this system is that your work and your temperament should match. So we're asking those of you who know the Sanskrit words for these 4 fields to please, at least for 1 week, forget that you know those words, because we bring a lot of misconception and baggage along with those terms, those of us who are very familiar with them. So my co-author, Dr. Ruchira Datta, a.k.a. Rukmini Devi Dasi, she and I have come up with these English terms, the field of artistry, the field of ideas, the field of resources, the field of government. Now, why has Krishna divided all the hundreds of thousands of careers into these 4 fields? Well, one reason is that these 4 fields always exist, and specific careers may not. There's a lot of careers that are existing in 2024 that didn't exist at all 20 years ago or 100 years ago. And many careers that existed 200 of years ago that don't exist today. So the specific careers are changing, but these 4 fields are stable. These 4 fields always exist in all but the most simple human society. The other thing is that the Dharma of these fields, each field has its own Dharma that's different from the Dharma of the other fields. Each field has a Dharma that matches a particular set of human tendencies. Now, these fields are very broad, and they each encompass a wide range of careers, which is why you can use the prosperity types and the fields together. So you figure out your broad field, and then within that field, you look for careers that match your prosperity types. Does this make sense? Yes? And I gave the example of a friend of mine who used to be a traveling musician and then became a tour guide in a park. And both of those careers were in the same field, and they both had the same prosperity types, even though they look like very different careers. So we had a whole 2-hour lesson on the field, so this time I'm going to go through it rather quickly. And we have 1 chapter in the book on the definition of the fields, and another chapter in the book on the temperament of the fields. So this is the field of artistry. Who can tell me, who is here in the other classes, something about the nature of this field? What does it provide for society? Yes. All the pleasures of society, yes. Huh? The spices of society, you could say, yes. Metaphorically speaking, yes. What else? Yes. That's the temperament of the field. Yes, the temperament of the people in this field is a mood of service, of wanting to please a customer or a client and finding their happiness in that service, in pleasing others. Yes, what else? Yes, this is the field that provides all the functionality. Without this field, nothing works. Yes? Yes. Entertainment, which is the pleasures of society. Yes. What else does this field provide? Make society beautiful. Yes. Functional, beautiful, supportive, service. Yes? Anything else you can tell me about this field? Huh? The mood of this field is kind of the essence of bhakti, that service mood, that I'm finding my happiness in serving others. Yes, that the happiness of my client or my customer, that is my happiness. Anything else about the temperament of the people in this field or the nature of this field? Yes? Yes, this is a field of honesty. According to the Bhagavad Purana, this is a field of honesty. These people are not profit-minded. They're not expansion-minded. They're satisfied people. And they'll tell you, this is how much I paid for the pipe, and so you owe me, you owe me $200 for the pipe. Here's a receipt that I paid $200 for it, and here's the cost of my labor, right? And they'll actually ask you the fair and accurate price. Yes? So it's a field of satisfaction. What's the source of satisfaction for people in this field? Pleasing, and pleasing the customer or client, and what else? Serving, and what else? They'd be able to express their particular craft or their service, yeah? I did that, I made that, I cleaned that, yes. Response from the customers. And also these people really want basic creature comforts. So they want a decent place to live. They don't need a mansion, but they want a decent place to live, good food to eat, caring family, nice clothes to wear. So they want to be treated with dignity and with respect. They want proper compensation for their work. They want the pleasure of their client, and they want basic creature comforts. These people are providing the status quo in society, the foundation of society. Oh. Any questions about artistry at all? Or any more comments about artistry? Yes. In artistry would be nurses, unless they're acting as like doctors. There's some, at least in America, we have some nurse practitioners that act like doctors. Your technical people, your radiation technician and your, what do they call the phlebotomists, the people who draw blood. Those, and of course your receptionists, your assistants, they're in artistry. If it's a medical business that's being run for profit, then the people running the medical business are in resources. Generally, dentists and surgeons are considered in artistry because they're more like plumbers or electricians. But sometimes you have dentists and surgeons who are also really educating people, not always. The doctors who are actually educating and guiding people. Right, like I saw a chiropractor when I was in Auckland, and he didn't just move my bones around, and he moved my bones around, and then he told me, okay, do these stretching exercises every day, and he's showing me models of the skeleton, and this is what's going on here, and this is what's going on, and this is what would be good for you. He's educating me. Right? He's not just changing a bandage and taking my blood pressure. So that's in the field of ideas. Now you can also have medical work in the field of government. So you have people in government who are regulating the medical industry and making sure that the people in medicine are following the law, making sure that people have access, fair and just access to medical care. So that's in government. The CDC in America? I'm not that familiar with how it works. I haven't really looked at how it works. But you obviously have researchers there that are in ideas. You're going to have assistants there that are in artistry. And they at least liaise with the government. So I don't know if you have any field of government people working in the CDC, but they definitely work very closely with government. So at least they're advising government. I don't know if you have any resource people in the CDC. I don't think the CDC exists to make money at all, or at least it certainly shouldn't. That would be a problem. But you can have a for-profit hospital or a for-profit clinic where people are running a clinic or a hospital as a business. Yeah. Or even mentally, if there's a psychology clinic. So I've seen this where there's a clinic where you can get different types of medical care, and the people giving it to you are like a massage therapist might just be in artistry, but then you might have counselors and psychologists that are in ideas, and the receptionist is in artistry, and maybe the person running the thing is in resources. And then there's probably nobody there in government. But the government is regulating them. So the government is regulating, you can't just say, I'm a therapist, you have to have some degree and some credentials. Okay, going on to ideas. So who can tell me something about the field of ideas? Yeah? Yeah, it's also honest, but it's a different honesty than artistry. It's straightforward honesty. It's giving people the unvarnished, objective truth. Right? So in artistry, they might not tell you that the wedding gown you picked out makes you look fat. They might not. I love this, and say, fine, if you love it, you love it. Right? But in ideas, the doctor is going to say, you need to lose weight, even though you don't want to hear that. So it's a different kind of honesty. It's a straightforward kind of honesty. What does ideas provide for society? Yes. Huh? Guidance. Yes. The knowledge of society. Yes. What else? Yeah? The vision of where everything's going, yes. Yes. How people can be successful, yes. Gives people guidance how they can be successful. Wisdom, yes. By the way, I'm happy the fans are on, but it does make it a little hard to hear. So you can either use mics or speak up a little bit, because we're not going to turn off the fans, folks. That's not going to happen. We're definitely going to have the fans on. But it does mean if you speak very quietly, it's hard for me to hear you. Okay? Now, usually people in the field of ideas communicate through language or mathematics, but sometimes through the fine arts. So there's a small percentage of people we might categorize as artists and musicians and dancers and actors who are actually in the field of ideas. What's more common is someone in the field of ideas uses music or art or theater in a secondary way. Right? Like I'm using art here. Of course, I haven't drawn these pictures. But there are some people who actually are producing art or music or theater or dance for the purpose of wisdom rather than for the purpose of pleasure and beauty. Anything else you can tell me about the field of ideas, the temperament of the people or the nature of the field? Yes. Often, because a lot of the work in that field other people see as stupid and useless. Yes, it's hard for people to understand the value of a lot of the work in this field, especially researching theoretical knowledge. So it doesn't appear to have immediate, practical, applicable value. And so there has to be a mood in society to make sure that the work of this field and the people in this field are taken care of. And especially since they tend to be very naturally satisfied people, it's hard for them to be ambitious enough to take care of themselves. Yes, so they're doing work which is often not understood or appreciated in society, and they don't have the ambition to go out necessarily and get everything that they need. So some mood in society that these people need, they need a place to work, and they need to be taken care of. Yes. Yeah, definitely improve people's value of life, but indirectly. Indirect. So ideas is going to provide the guidance for government and resources and artistry, who are then going to put that into practical effect to improve people's lives. People in the field of ideas aren't going to do that directly. Like engineers are all in the field of artistry. And many kinds of engineers are going to be pulling the theoretical knowledge from the field of ideas and turning that into something practical that helps people. Some people in the field of ideas, like your doctors and your, children's teachers will be doing that more directly. Anything else about the field of ideas? They often like thinking, yes. Those are people who often like thinking, researching, meditating, yes. Anything else about ideas? Yes? They're not as interested in the comforts of life, yes. So theirs is also a field of satisfaction, but what does their satisfaction come from? Yes. Studying, having an active internal life, having an active mental and intellectual life. So this is also, it's a non-expansive field, it's a satisfied field, but the satisfaction is different than the satisfaction in the field of artistry. And it's not a sentimental field. Yes.
They need time and space to think.
Yes.
Good with deadlines.
They need time and space, need a lot of freedom. Like
They're not
yes, they like a lot of balance in their life. Yes. Yeah. Okay, going on to the field of resources. Who can tell me something about the field of resources? Yes. It's a diplomatic field. Actually, Srila Prabhupada says that some lying is compulsory in this field. That you can say to people, you know, we're having a huge sale and giving this to you without making any profit. What else about this field? Always want to expand. The Bhagavad Purana says they're always what? Thirsty. The BBT translation doesn't translate a lot, but the literal meaning of the Sanskrit word is they're always thirsty. Trishna. Yes. They provide all the raw goods for all of society. It's the only field that does that. Yeah, they're often interested in bigger production, yes. They don't just want to keep 2 cows in their backyard, they want to keep 200 cows. They don't just want a little pottery shop, they want to run a chain of pottery shops. They're not interested in just making enough money so that, like in artistry, they want to make enough money so they have a comfortable house and good food and nice clothes. But no, they want to make sure that everybody has a comfortable house. They're not exactly looking after everyone, that's government. But they want to provide society with wealth.
And they can't be really honest.
They can't be honest in the sense that people in artistry and in ideas can be honest. I mean, it's interesting, Srila Prabhupada in the 16th chapter, verse 1 to 3, he says socham, or cleanliness, particularly applies to this field. That they should be doing honest work. They shouldn't be working in the black market, for example. Right? There's a high standard we'll get to that in another principle. They should have a high standard of ethics. But they're not technically honest the way artistry and ideas is. Again, you don't expect advertising to be entirely honest, do you? Yes. Okay. What are their interests? What are the questions that they ask about their work? How to expand profit for what purpose? What are the questions?
Sustaining.
Is it sustainable and is it regenerative? So in artistry, what were the questions? Is it beautiful and is it supportive? In ideas, what are the questions? Is it wise and is it true? And in resources, what are the questions? Is it sustainable and is it regenerative? Profit is a means of sustainability and regenerability, if that's such a word. So people with the Dharma of resources are not interested in profit for profit. They're interested in profit because without profit, you cannot have sustainable regenerative wealth. You have to save some seeds from the harvest to plant the next year. You have to have something to put back into the business. You follow? You can't just pay the bills. Like I have one friend who just recently started a business, and I said, I was asking her about different things, and she said, well, altogether, we took in 6 figures last year, but I put all that back into the business. She said, I don't expect it actually to be making a profit for at least 6 years. So this understanding that to have something be sustainable and regenerative, I have to make a profit over my expenses that I can put, and this is also part of the expansive mood, right? That I want to make sure that I'm taking care of people, but in terms of making sure they have all the raw materials that they need. I'm thinking of it like, if you shop for someone and you just come back and you've got the flour and the eggplant and you're giving them the raw materials. Okay, any questions or comments about the field of resources? Okay, going on to the field of government. So the field of government is necessary because it makes laws, it enforces laws, it makes sure there's social justice, it takes care of internal and external threats. It provides services that individuals are having a hard time to do on an individual level. Like roads, for example. Everyone's not going to build their own little piece of the road in front of their house. Yes? And this applies to political governments and also places like NATO, UN, Interpol that aren't exactly political governments, and in our modern day and age, charities that do government work. So if you have some charity, that's building roads, that's making sure that people have clean water, that's making sure that people have access to education and medical supplies or policing and that kind of thing. They're not a political government, but they're doing the work of government. And it applies to landlords who take care of, say, their apartment complex as if it was a little government. Okay, so what can you tell me about the work of this field? Yeah? They take care of the public. What else? Yes, they're energized by crisis. Now, they try to protect people from crisis. They try to prevent crisis. But when crisis comes of its own accord, they're energized by it. They're the running into the fire people. This is the firefighters. Everyone else runs out of the fire. They run into it. What else about this field? What are the questions that they ask about their work? Is it just? Is it fair? Yes. And is it honorable? Is it just and is it honorable? Anything else you can tell me about this field? Yeah? It's a diplomatic field. In fact, one of the careers in this field is being a diplomat. Yes, this is a field where people do negotiation and diplomacy rather than straightforward speaking. It's also, an expansive or satisfied field? Expansive. We want to protect more people, take care of more people in better and better and better ways. And okay. All right, any questions about or discussions about the field of government? All of this is about how everything's meant to be, yes. This is not a discussion of what it actually looks like. That would be a very depressing class. This is a discussion of what it's supposed to be, and with the idea of what steps we can take to get from here to there. You can't build an ideal society or have an ideal life on a personal level unless you have some idea of what that means. So career Dharma is looking at the first 7 principles are on an individual level. What would my ideal career look like on an individual level? And the last 2 are on a societal level. Okay, and here we have one of those 2 verses where Krishna says, don't do someone else's work. Even if you think you can do it fantastically, even if you're good. What were the 3 things about work? To be expert in the what? The knowledge or information to do the work, the skills or the craft of the work, and the Dharma or the values. So even if you're expert in the knowledge or skills or the craft, you've got to have a matching set of values. He says, don't follow someone else's path. Don't pretend to be something that you are not. And what does he say your work becomes if you pretend to be something you're not? Anybody remember? You'll definitely be frustrated. And what does he call it? Anybody remember what Krishna? A vehicle of fear. He says your work will be a vehicle of fear. A bhayavaha. Bhaya means fear. Avaha means a vehicle. It will cause distress to you and to everyone else. And we looked at 3 ways that this would happen on a personal level, which of course would still affect others. So swadharma is my own work, padadharma is someone else's work. So when I'm doing my work, I'm going to feel energized. I'm going to feel enthused. My work is actually going to charge my batteries, so to speak. When I'm doing someone else's work, I'm going to feel depleted or frustrated. I may procrastinate. If I'm doing my own work, my mind naturally flows with my work. Krishna talks about how the yogi has to make their mind their friend. It's very easy for your mind to be your friend when you're doing your own work. When we're doing someone else's work, our mind becomes our enemy. We'll be constantly fighting with our own mind in order to do the work. So this is on a physical level, and this is on a mental level. And then Krishna also talks a lot in the Bhagavad Gita about doing detached work. When I do my own work, I'm naturally detached. As Prabhupada said, if you desire that which is natural, that's not a desire. Desirelessness is to be what is natural. If I want to be myself, then I'm naturally detached from the results of my work. If I try to do someone else's work, I become attached to the results of my work. So this is on a personal level for our own happiness, for our own spiritual advancement, why we should be doing our own work. Okay, going on to principle 2. Advancing through life while nourishing our nature. So here we talked about that there's a difference between being an expert and a novice. That I may have a proclivity for one of these 4 fields, but I may not have been trained, like I may not have been trained in the knowledge and the skills of that work. I may not have had my Dharma be trained. So when we read in the scripture the descriptions of these 4 fields, we generally find it's just describing the expertise. Who has the dharmic expertise? What's the ideal? And we may say, well, okay, I don't fit into any of those ideals. But what we want to look at is, do I have the inclination for that field? Am I manifesting that dharmic inclination? And one of our keys is that Krishna says our nature cannot be repressed. Whatever I'm doing, that nature is going to come out. Now, the research shows that by age 13, a person's values and natures are evident. My own personal experience working with kids is that often that's true far before then. But at least by 13, our basic nature is evident, and ideally, the teachers, the parents, the mentors, the guides, they are going to be able to recognize that and actually help train that. So by the time you're 18, 20, 22 years old, you're already actually trained in your livelihood. Wouldn't that be nice? You know, instead of our modern society where people are 35 and they're like, I don't know who I am and I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Now, one way this may manifest, one way our nature may manifest, is in something that annoys others. Because we haven't yet been trained in the Dharma, or the people around us don't really appreciate our particular nature. All right, so I gave the example of the guy who in class, stop that, his teacher would always say. right? He was always getting in trouble, sent down to the principal's office, right? Okay, I'll stop it. Oops. Right? And one day when he was 10, one of his teachers said, please stay after class. Oh boy, I'm in trouble again. He said, no, you're not in trouble. And what did he give the kid? Drums. Actually, he became a very famous drummer. Right? So sometimes it shows up as something that disturbs others. Or I was teaching this in one high school, and one of the kids says, I'm always getting in trouble for thinking. So I talked to his mother about it, and she said, yeah, he'll be sitting around, and I'll say, what are you doing? I'm thinking. Well, stop thinking and go do something practical. So we give many examples in the book of this kind of thing, where our nature can come out in some way that, because it doesn't have its proper outlet and it hasn't been trained properly, it may manifest in some way that disturbs others. But certainly our basic nature is going to come out. Are we always, hey, that's not fair. You've got to fix that. Why aren't they following the rules? Or how can I make more money? How can I take care of nature better? Or how can I serve people more? Or how can I study this more? I mean, it's somehow or other, it's going to come out and assert itself. Then the way that career Dharma works with the life cycle is when we're young, our nature should be recognized and nourished. When we're in the prime of life, we should work according to our nature to make our livelihood. When we're in middle age, we should retire and guide others. And at the end of life, we have nothing to do with any of this, and we prepare for our final journey. All right, so a lot of people think that's it. I just connect my nature with my livelihood and nourish it and train it, and then I'll be happy. But we really need to expand beyond that to find satisfaction and purpose in our work. And here we have two principles. So the first is to extend our prosperity to others. So the Vedic wisdom literature doesn't have any concept of a single person, going out, working, collecting a lot of money, and spending it all on themselves. The idea is that you share your wealth at least with your partner, with your kids, with your parents, with the creatures who live around your house, with somebody. You don't just keep it all to yourself. Some giving, some charity. In the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, even the great souls are purified by giving in charity. Now, by the way, giving directly to Krishna is not charity. Giving directly to Krishna is called yajna. So like if we give food to Krishna, that's yajna. When we distribute that prasadam to everyone else, that's dana or charity. Prabhupada told my god sister Yamuna, who is an expert cook, he says, if you don't teach others how to cook, you will become envious. I really thought, well, what does that mean exactly? And I thought, well, envy means I always want to have something better than other people. Like, I don't mind if you have money as long as I have more. I don't mind if you have a nice car as long as my car is nicer, right? And so charity is the opposite of that. Charities is I want to share and I want to help. Now, what's really interesting is that according to the Vedas, the amount of money we have in this life is directly related to how charitable we were in previous lives and in this life. And I think of it like a family with many children. And you have a plate. Do you call them cookies or biscuits? Cookies. Wow. You call them cookies, huh? 2 times now I find you guys follow the Americans instead of the British. Yes. All right, so let's say you have a plate of cookies. And you have, let's say you have a whole bunch of kids. You have 6 kids or something. When you give that plate to one kid and that kid just eats them all himself or herself, next time you're going to give it to another kid. You follow? If you give it to a kid who shares with his brothers and sisters, her brothers and sisters, then you're going to give them more. So the more we share, the more Krishna gives. And it's interesting that the empirical research shows that when you give more charity in this life, you also get more money in this life. It's not like, well, I was stingy in my last life, I'm just going to be poor, nothing I can do about it. No, more charitable in this life will equate to more money in this life. Now, one can also be charitable with one's prosperity types. So even if you don't have a lot of cash on hand, you can still be charitable. Whatever way in which I'm getting enriched, Whichever way my work is bringing me prosperity, I can share that. Now, this is a very brief list. In our book, we go through this in much more detail with many specific examples. But you can think of it like, giving is also not just giving money, but giving time, giving your energy. What do you do as a volunteer? To volunteer your time, sharing your type of prosperity. So is that enough? So we do work that matches our nature and we give in charity, but our work also has to be ethical and meaningful, which is what you brought up and that other gentleman who sat over there and isn't here today. So all work should be honest work. Just because two of our fields are diplomatic doesn't mean their work should be dishonest. You understand what I'm saying? You've got to be diplomatic when you're negotiating with North Korea, but that doesn't mean the government should be dishonest. You may be diplomatic that you're advertising, oh, hey, for you, I'm giving you this at a huge discount. But the basic work should be honest. So honesty it's a very simple concept that you're charging a fair amount for your product or service that you're representing accurately, and you're compensating any of your employees also fairly and adequately. Is that enough? Well, you also have to be producing something of value. You could be doing work that's according to your nature and giving in charity, and it could be honest, and you could be producing something that's useless. Or you could be producing something that's harmful. Yes, so like tobacco, alcohol, pornography. So our work shouldn't be harming society, and nor should it be producing something useless. It should be producing something that actually has value. Now, for many people, this is going to be enough. But there's a spiritual dimension that can take you a step beyond this. So this is a kind of secret, esoteric thing. And we have a chapter in our book, which we consider kind of optional, esoteric meaning of doing work of value. So if I'm just doing work of value like this, I'm operating in the law of karma. So the way karma works is I can't hurt you in a way that you're not destined to be hurt. That wouldn't be fair, right? And I can't help you in a way that you're not destined to be helped. So when I'm operating in the law of karma, at best I can be like a DHL or FedEx delivery person. You've earned your karma and I can deliver it to you. Now, if I choose to deliver your bad karma, I get bad karma. If I choose to deliver your good karma, I get good karma. So when I'm doing so-called good for you, I'm really just accumulating good karma for myself because I can only give you what you've deserved. And how do you deserve it? You've paid for it somehow. You've made some kind of karmic payment. Everybody with me? This means everything is always in balance. There's no net gain, which is one reason why material enjoyment in and of itself is frustrating. We want to have an idea of good as an increase. We want to increase in quantity, quality, or time. But within the sphere of karma, everything goes into balance. Whatever good you get, you've paid for it in some way. And I can't really be an agent of good for you. I mean, I can be a delivery person, but I can't add good to you that you haven't earned. However, one can go above karma and above what Rukmini and I call the cycle of frustration. So if we just do our regular Dharma, we get arta. Arta means prosperity. With that arta, I get kama or pleasure. But because intrinsically material enjoyment is superficial, it's not touching the soul, and because intrinsically there's no net gain, eventually I become frustrated and I say, okay, I want liberation. I'm going to quit my job, or I'm going to not work at all, or I'm going to join some liberation movement. And eventually we become frustrated with that, and we go back to our ordinary Dharma, and we stay in this cycle. So we can get out of this by working with prema, by working with love. If I work with love for my work, for myself, for the people that I serve, and if I work with love for Krishna, something amazing happens. So spiritual value doesn't require any payment. You might say, well, you have to take some trouble in spiritual life. Okay, but that's just making you receptive. It's not a payment. And we can act as the agent to give people spiritual benefit that they haven't paid for at all. We call this causeless mercy. And I have real agency there. I can give somebody spiritual benefit that's outside the realm of their karma. Nobody's made any payment for it. No payment needs to be made. And I have that power that I can say, I'm going to do this. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur talks about this in Madhurya Kadambini, that the devotee can choose to give somebody love of God, and then that mercy of the Lord will follow the mercy of the devotee. So when we work this way, no matter what kind of work we're doing, when I work out of love for my work, for myself, for the people or animals or nature that I serve, and for Krishna, I actually have real agency to produce real value in my work beyond just the balance. Dynamic, expanding value. Now there's another way that we need to be ethical in our work, and we're turning again to this verse that Krishna has twice in the Gita, Shreyan Swadharma Viguna Paradharmas Tanustitat, don't do others' work. As soon as I do others' work, even if I think it's doing work of value, even if I think it's honest, it's intrinsically unethical. I am going to bring my Dharma, because I can't repress it, I'm going to bring my Dharma into a place where it doesn't fit. And so not only am I going to be depleted, is my mind going to be giving me trouble, and am I going to be attached, but I'm also going to cause trouble for society. So we have 2 chapters on this in the book, and I went into this in detail yesterday, so I'm going to go through this more quickly today. Crossing government and resources. These are both what? What's similar? Expansion, diplomacy. But they're quite different. Government is about collecting and redistributing resources to care for people, and resources is about taking from the natural world and making that raw material available to society in a way that is sustainable. When people with the mentality of government work in resources, they're not going to have this sustainable, regenerative mentality. Therefore, they will often fail to have a profit, or they will fail to set appropriate prices, and people will starve. And we gave the example of when the government took over agriculture in the former Soviet Union. There was actually a famine. When people with the mentality of resources work in government, they will try to profit from government, which perverts the role of government. And we gave the example of privately owned prisons in the United States that don't really work towards the rehabilitation of the prisoners. Crossing government and ideas. So these are both fields where there's a lot of systems thinkers, where they're guiding society. But ideas is doing that theoretically from a platform of straightforwardness and satisfaction, and government is doing that from a platform of practicality with an expansive diplomatic mood. When people with the mentality of ideas work in government, they're too merciful. Criminals get off free. They have difficulty making fast decisions without a lot of information. They have difficulty getting people to be patriotic and care about their group. When people with the mentality of government work in ideas, they may impose a hierarchy on the free flow of knowledge, preventing that flow. Or they may politicize knowledge. They may skew knowledge for their particular political purposes, thus destroying faith in the field of ideas. Crossing ideas and resources. These are both unsentimental fields, but they have very different systems of ethics. So if people with the mentality of ideas work in resources, they're often going to feel that it's unethical to be making a profit and making money. So they'll often neglect the work of the field. They're also not expansive. They may just give everything away. When people with the mentality of resources work in ideas, they're going to think it's unethical to spend money and time on gathering theoretical knowledge that doesn't have immediate practical and financial application. So they may neglect some of the most important work of the field of ideas. Or they may skew knowledge for profit, which will also destroy people's faith in the field of ideas. Crossing government and artistry. So these are both fields that work directly with people, but artistry works as what? Artistry serves people as what? There's entertainment included in the field. More as individuals, yeah. As in this, but the mood. What is the mood of the service of people in the field of artistry? Their mood is as an assistant. You know, in Sanskrit we would call that Dasi above. And then in the field of government, what's their mood? More like a what? Like a father, more like a parent. So both government and artistry are serving people directly, but government more in the mood of being a parent, and artistry more in the mood of being an assistant. So when people with the mentality of artistry work in government, they'll often turn their government work into a bureaucracy. They'll have a hard time with the immediate need to make abstract decisions. They want things very concrete. Artistry is the most concrete field. They also are not running into danger people, which is necessary in government. And we gave the example of police officers in America when they were shooting in a school. They didn't go in. They said, well, we're not going to go in if people are shooting. So that the mentality of artistry is safety and security in the status quo. When people with the mentality of government work in artistry, their desire for justice and morals and ethics is extremely frustrated. They may become vigilantes or in general agitators. And they may not be able to adjust to the idea of pleasing clients or customers, so they may be very insubordinate. They may not meet deadlines. Crossing ideas and artistry. When people with this, so the similarities of these fields, they're both fields of satisfaction and honesty, but very different kinds of satisfaction and very different kinds of honesty. And ideas is an unsentimental field, and artistry is one of trying to please customers or clients. When people with the mentality of ideas work in artistry, you're going to have the same problem as when government people work in artistry. They're going to chafe against the idea of pleasing a customer or a client. They're going to tend to be insubordinate. They're going to tend to procrastinate. Also, they're going to have a hard time dealing with the nature of that field and providing the pleasures of society. They may dry up the field, or they may get pulled into the sensual nature of the field, and particularly if they're intellectuals in the field, suited for the field of ideas, they may use that intellectual power in a distorted way and use people's desire for pleasure in a way that will harm them. People with the mentality of artistry working in ideas, they may not be able to grasp the nuances and contextualization needed for that field, or they may sensualize knowledge. They may have a hard time dealing with the extensive freedom in that field. Crossing resources and artistry. So these both deal with the practical side of life. When people with the mentality of artistry work in resources, they're not going to have the expansive mood. They're going to really have a hard time making a profit. You know, they'll be happy to run a little bakery, but they don't want to run a chain of bakery stores. And they don't really get the sustainable regenerative wealth. And so if they do run a big business, they may end up being polluters. When people with the mentality of resources work in artistry, they're going to try to bring that expansive profit-making mood into that field. And so they'll do things like turn the craft into a mass production factory, right? Or they'll just take the entertainment industry, instead of it being uplifting for people, they'll just try to have it make a lot of money by throwing in a lot of sex and violence. All right, going beyond this to dharmic mastery. So here we have 3 principles, and these are our very deeply spiritual principles. So our first one is to delight in cherishing our prosperity and field of work. to understand that whatever prosperity we're enjoying, it doesn't originate in ourselves. It comes from Mother Nature, which we understand the earth and Mother Nature to be like the wife of God. If we don't cherish our prosperity, it's like cutting off the head of the goose who laid the golden egg, or cutting off the tree branch that gives you fruit. So our first source of prosperity is our own body and mind. Many people have jobs that hurt them physically or mentally or emotionally. Right? Well, I'm going to push myself just to make money, even if it damages my health. And also, we want to cherish the prosperity of the other people that we work with. Right? We want to make sure we take care of them physically and make sure we take care of them mentally. That's also a way of cherishing our prosperity. And of course, we get our prosperity from nature. We want to make sure our work takes care of the land, the sea, and the sky. And then to take care of our prosperity types. So this is a recognition that whatever prosperity we're getting, whatever particular type of prosperity we're getting, is a gift of the Lord. And we should, in our Hare Krishna speak, it would be to enjoy it as prasadam rather than bhoga, to see it as mercy, and to take care of its integrity. So like if I'm enjoying Aishvarya, I want to make sure that other people also feel smart and competent. Not that I'm going to use Aishvarya to be a bully. Right? If I'm enjoying Gyan, I want to also develop my emotional intelligence. Remember that I could be wrong. If I'm enjoying Virya, to make sure that I get my strength in healthy ways. If I'm enjoying Shri, to make sure that I keep high standards of fairness and not use beauty to manipulate others. If I'm enjoying Yasha, to not ask people to respect me even when I'm wrong, just to keep up my reputation. If I'm enjoying Vairagya, to not be so renounced that I stop caring about people. Again, this is a very short list, so we have much more explanations with examples in the book. And then to cherish our field. So many of you have brought up over the last few days how where people can be in the right place but be corrupt. So cherishing the field means, okay, I'm in the right place and I take care of the integrity of my field. I follow my Dharma in this field. I don't just stop at, well, I'm inclined to the field. I become dharmically expert and keep the Dharma of that field. So those in artistry keep the Dharma by being willing to sacrifice to keep the quality and integrity of their goods and services, even when they're being pressured for more profit or expediency. In government is to be willing to give your life for honesty, for justice and honor, to make sure that everybody gets equal justice, to remember that you're serving people uppermost, not to profit from government. In resources is to treat the resources with kindness and respect, the land and the animals, to keep everything clean and pristine for long-term planning, to treat my employees properly, to make sure my financial dealings are honest. In ideas, it's to remain dedicated to truth applied objectively for people's benefit, to make sure that one is not in a position where one can be financially manipulated to skew truth, to respect others' expertise. Okay, principle 6 is having celebrations of the sacred in our life and work. So Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 3:16, Evam Pavaritam Chakram. And Prabhupada, in talking about this, says chakra means a wheel and a wheel means movement. So in the natural world, the plants and animals take from nature and give back to nature automatically. We as humans need to intentionally give back. Prabhupada would say it's like paying our electric bill to the sun. We cannot just be taking. So on a regular basis, once a week, preferably once a day, we take time out from our work and we give back to our source, whether we recognize our source as Krishna, the Supreme Being, or as the Father of the universe, or as the all-pervading energetic, or as the universal body itself, however we recognize our source, and whatever tradition we may be in, to spend some time giving back. Now, eventually, it shouldn't just be we have some time every day where we do some celebratory ceremonies of connection. But eventually this sense of connection with the divine pervades our life, and every act we do becomes a celebratory ceremony of connection. The last principle on an individual level is to work above the shades of ego. So Rukmini and I call these shades because Thomas is like a dark shade over the window with those light-stopping shades, you know. And then Rajas is like a sheer curtain over a window. Sattva is like a clean and clear window, and being above the shades is like being outside. Okay, let's go through what these shades look like. So first we have Thomas. All right, so I'm Thomas, and I'll do the right thing if it's easy, you know? I mean, look, like I'll buy a vegan burger, but only if they sell it at McDonald's for the same price. Don't expect me to go to another restaurant and pay a higher amount. I mean, I'm the kind of person that if the remote control's at the other side of the room, I'm just going to watch whatever's next. You know, I'm going to do what's easy. All right? I'm not an ambitious person, you know? And nor am I some spiritual person. I take care of my family, take care of my stuff, and don't you insult them. I'm very easily insulted, and I will insult you back. Then there's Rajas. I am a very upright, honest, hard-working person. I am a builder of society. I'm not lazy, and I'm not some woo person. See all this stuff I've earned? You see this nice house I have? And all my degrees and all? I worked for them, I tell you. And I will tell you how many hours I spent working and what trouble I went through and how much money I spent and how hard it was, because I've earned that. Yeah? And someday my name will be in the history books and my statue will be in the park. I am sattva. I am very spiritual. I live in harmony with the world. I'm very equipoised. I'm very forgiving and kind because it makes me feel so good inside. I'm not lazy and I'm not ambitious. I have a shelf full of crystals and angels. I see everyone equally, unlike those materialistic people. And above the shades, I'm a soul who's on an adventure with the divine. Life is full of play. I don't know how my adventure is going to turn out, and I don't know how I'm going to be used by the divine. I consider it an exciting, adventurous dance of reciprocation. The shades are like the dark side of our work. We can be very tempted, according to the type of work that we do, to pull energy from these shades, which then contaminate us and everything that we do. An example in charity, if I'm giving charity in tamas, I give the wrong thing to the wrong person. I give alcohol to the alcoholic. Or I give the right thing to the right person, but without respect. Here, take your charity and leave me alone. Or at the wrong time, I'll give charity when the person's on the toilet or they're in the middle of a meal. In Rajas, I give the right thing to the right person with respect at the right time, but I'm calculating. Well, I'm giving you this because I'll get this back, and I'm giving you this because my boss told me to give it, and if I give it, my boss will like me. Or I wish I wasn't giving this. I could have spent it on something else. In Sattva, I give charity, the right thing to the right person, the right time, with respect, because it makes me feel very happy. And above the shades, I give the right thing to the right person with respect at the right time because it makes Krishna happy. In the workplace, in tamas, disengaged, deceitful, insulting, lazy, procrastinating. Rajas, greedy, envious, aggressive. Things go well. Yay! Things go poorly. In sattva, equipoised, always determined in success or failure without identifying with the work. Above the shades, this is from Bhagavad Gita 3:30. 3 things we don't do, 3 things we do. 3 things we don't do. We don't exploit our prosperity types. We cherish them. We don't think ourselves as an owner. We don't think I'm the owner of this body, this mind, my work, my wealth, the people who work under me. And we're not lazy. The three things we do: we dedicate everything we do to our ultimate source. We always remember, I'm not this body, I'm not this mind, I'm not this work, I'm a spiritual being. And we do the work that's according to our nature. So that's all the individual principles. Then we're going to look now briefly at the whole system for peace and prosperity. Srila Prabhupada used this phrase, peace and prosperity, nearly 200 times. So our first principle here, principle 8, is maintaining societal balance, cooperation between the fields, and competition within the fields. So in our book, we have a chapter on societal balance, on cooperation, and another one on competition. So cooperation, the fields are not meant to compete with each other. They're meant to cooperate with each other. So ideas trains and guides the other field, and government approves licensing, approves accreditation, provides venues, facilitators to launch endeavors or repair endeavors or maintain cooperative endeavors. Then resources organize and directs and distributes the flow of money, materials, energy, and other resources that are needed, and artistry assists everyone else. You can think of this like the different organs within the body that cooperate with each other. Now, it would be lovely if everybody worked in the right field and cherished their field. But that's not always going to happen, so the fields can act as checks and balances of each other. So ideas holds government to the rule of law. You can think about the role of a free press. Government regulates through law. Resources through how they spend their money. Artistry because it contains the greatest number of people through their voting with their feet. But also some parts of artistry can regulate through what they choose to translate into art, music, and theater. Then within each field, there should be competition. In theory, we should always want to do our best for its own sake, but when there's competition, it encourages us to do our best. It focuses our mind, it invigorates our efforts, it helps us to reach the edge of our potential and explore our abilities. Now, there should be friendly competition, like in a jewelry district or in a fashion district, where you have a lot of similar kinds of businesses, and that's good for the customers and good for the business. We don't want to have competition where we're trying to erase others or where we're trying to be a predator of others. So competition in artistry brings us masterpieces, inventions. Competition in resources gives us higher quality of resources and higher quality of distribution of resources. Competition in government. Think of the benefit of having more than one political party, or the ability to experiment with different types of government. Competition in ideas helps keep ideas relevant to time, place, and circumstances, and maintains the purity in science, in religion, and in medicine. And finally, all-inclusive, sustainable prosperity. Modern economists made a deliberate decision to separate theories of economic prosperity from the land. And they started propounding that economic prosperity equals economic growth. What is wrong with a growth model for prosperity? It can't grow forever. We have a finite planet. If you're going to propound infinite growth on a finite planet, you're going to end up trying to force. You're going to try to force the land through artificial pesticides and fertilizers. You're going to try to force animals with antibiotics and hormones. You're going to force also distribution so people can eat strawberries all year. We have one famous evil person described in the Bhagavad Purana, Hiranyakashipu. He did this. He tried to force all the plants to bear out of season. You're going to try to force people to do things that are unnatural. beyond their capacity. You're going to create a huge wealth disparity. People are going to growth. So you're going to have some person with $200 billion and somebody else who can't even afford to have clean water. So the last principle of career Dharma is all-inclusive, sustainable prosperity. To start having economic models that show how to have an ideal society where everyone or nearly everyone can enjoy the kind of work that is their nature and the prosperity types that actually nourish them and have all the basic things that they need for a happy life, as well as attaining spiritual realization. So we looked at identifying our ideal career field and prosperity type, learning the secrets of making our work deeply meaningful, progressing toward dharmic mastery, and the whole system for peace and prosperity that encompass these 9 principles. So this is our last class on career Dharma. If anyone has any questions, comments, additions, subtractions. Thank you for being here on such a hot, muggy day. Yes.
I'm going to try my best to make it succinct.
Okay.
My question is regarding, say, health practitioner, like say an acupuncturist who's in a natural health field, but in the natural health field, you have to run your clinic as a business. So if your tendency in nature is, say, ideas or artistry, but you have to jump into resources to make the business
Okay, well,
run.
first of all, you could have a resource person manage the business.
But what if you can't afford that?
No. A resource person automatically makes themselves affordable. If they actually have the dharma of the field of resources, they will make the business profitable.
Okay.
If they can't do that, they're not a resource person.
Okay.
And you can also have something very small that's not profit-minded.
No,
If you're naturally in ideas or naturally in artistry, and you keep something small that you need to have enough money coming in to keep it going, but you're not trying to expand anything.
But in terms of like advertising to get clients and things like that, you're still dipping into admin and those areas that aren't your natural inclination.
Well, again, if you actually bring in a resource person, they will know how to do things to generate enough money that they'll have enough money. Otherwise, they're not a resource person. Then you're just hiring an artistry person. So if you're hiring an artistry person who's going to design advertisements for you, then you're going to have to do the resources type work. Do you see the difference with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you're not going to like it. Like when I studied neurolinguistic programming, so we had 2 teachers, but one of them was kind of the lead person, and he told me a few years later he stopped doing it because he was having to put as much energy into marketing as to teaching, and he didn't like that. But that means you're an idea person just hiring artistry person to like put the ads together, and you're doing the resources type work.
So it's knowing who, like,
Yeah, that's not going to be satisfying. So either you find a way to run it on a very simple level. You know, I took a course last year in how to have your own online courses, and they were really emphasizing you don't need to spend money on marketing. You know, you can have something that's very simple and that will sustain you without having to spend a lot of money setting it up. And if you're genuinely the ideas person, you'll be satisfied with that. You know, and if you're looking at, well, this really could be expanded, then you bring a resource person to run that as a business. But if you're going to do that, you want to make sure your resource person isn't controlling you if you're an ideas person.
That was the other thing, is that they can start
you
telling
need
you how to do things.
Ideas people need to maintain their freedom.
Yeah.
They need to maintain their space, and they need to make sure that they're not controlled monetarily, especially by government and resource people. But there are resource people who particularly want to assist the field of ideas.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that clear?
Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Help put this into education to
Well, we have a book. So, yeah. Well, we've written the book in such a way that it could definitely be used as a textbook. And the projects we're working on right now, well, we're having the book be created as an audio book, but we're also working on an online course. And our first online course is going to be very much just what I've taught here in person. And we want to do 2 after that. We want to do 1 more for your systems thinkers, more for your leaders. How would you institute this on a societal level? And then we want to do another one for people who want to become coaches in Career Dharma. That will probably need a lot of one-on-one work. But right now we're just trying to get this out, which is hard for me to do while I'm running around the world. And I have no Wi-Fi. Huh? Yeah, not right this minute, but yeah. I'm supposed to be working with the other course people and giving them lists of questions and stuff, and I have no Wi-Fi. I have this one little bar on my phone up here, and all I can do is say, I have no Wi-Fi. Anyway, so we're working on that. And then just in the last week, someone contacted us, actually. This is kind of an interesting story. I taught this in India, in Mayapur, and one of the people who attended my classes there told his friend in America, who's been working with publishing for years, about the book. So she went out and bought the book, and 3 days later, she met my co-author for the first time just by chance. And she says, oh, I have your book. Anyway, so she contacted us, and she said, this needs to be turned into a workbook. And she was showing us all the examples of workbooks that she's produced. So we're working with her. Now, once we have a workbook and once we have a course for coaches, then it will be much easier to bring this into the educational field. Yes.
Is one of the main reasons behind burnout that one's placed within the incorrect field?
Yes.
So it's not so much how much work they're doing, it's more that they're doing the wrong work.
Yes.
Which is disturbing the mind,
Yes.
tiring them.
Or they're not doing 4 through 7, particularly. So if you're in the right field, but you're not doing, let's say, 3 through 7, or even 2, if your Dharma hasn't been trained, like if you're just in the place of your inclination, but you haven't learned how to do the Dharma. But yeah, if you're in the right field and not doing 3 through 7, you're not going to be very happy either. But yeah, we have those 2 big problems. You're in the wrong place, or you're in the right place and not doing it properly. But yeah, that's a huge, huge source of burnout. Another possible source, and we talk about this also in our book, is you're doing it right, but the people around you aren't. Like you're in some kind of what they call toxic work environment, where other people aren't cherishing the field or other people are in the wrong place, and it's so disturbing that it ends up affecting you. That's also a possibility. But yeah, one of the main reasons that people are burning out is they're in the wrong place. When you're in the wrong place, anybody remember those 3 things that happened to you personally when you're in the wrong place? You procrastinate, or you're depleted. Anxious. You're going to have physically, you're going to feel exhausted and depleted. Mentally, you're going to feel irritated in some way. And then you're going to become very attached to the results of your work. So you're going to be much more affected by your work environment and the externals when you're in the wrong place. And then, you're going to get burned out with what you're doing. Yes. But the others are important too. You've got to also cherish your prosperity and field of work and so forth. Anybody else? Any other comments, questions? Yes.
What about devotees who are always doing the needful and they don't fall into a particular field?
You really walked into it with this one. I love it when I get this question. Oh. So I looked up when Srila Prabhupada used this term, doing the needful. And guess what? He never once, not once, ever used it in terms of doing someone else's work. Never. The way he used it was, I've given you something general, you fill in the details. Such as, I've sent a check in the mail for a Mr. Sharma, please collect it from the post office and do the needful. The building roof is collapsed, please check into it and do the needful. He used the words, do the needful, for you figure out the details. I'm not going to tell you the details. Never once, ever did he use it for, there's something that needs to be done and you're living and breathing, just go do it whether it's your work or not. Never. And Prabhupada's instructions were consistently, like Krishna's instructions are, consistently do your own work. The only time that we're supposed to do anyone else's work is in an emergency. Just like if you're walking down the street and some kid runs in front of a car and there's no adults around, you're just going to pull that kid out of the street. You're not going to think, is it my kid, is it someone else's kid? Maybe am I going to bruise their arm by pulling their arm out of the street? You're just going to pull them out of the street. But how many times have you had to pull kids out of the street? Emergencies should be brief and rare. They shouldn't occur often, and they shouldn't last long. And if somebody is putting you in the wrong position with the excuse of an emergency, it's bad management. And not only is it bad management, it's harmful. So Srila Prabhupada was emphatic repeatedly, like Krishna is emphatic repeatedly, that one should do the work according to their nature. That it is the duty of the leaders to engage people accordingly. So, yeah. Now, people will say, well, there's so much to do, we don't have enough people, so we just have to keep putting people in the wrong place. The problem is that that's self-perpetuating. If I keep putting people in the wrong place, they're going to get burned out, and they're going to leave. And then I'm going to keep needing to put people there in the wrong place. And then they're going to tell other people how they got burned out, and then other people aren't going to want to come. And I'm always going to have a shortage of people. And then I'm always going to think I have to keep putting people in the wrong place. Now let's say in contrast that I actually organized a community according to these principles, and I had people in the right place, not only in the right place, but I had competition within the field, cooperation between the fields, checks and balances between the fields, people cherishing their fields, people extending their prosperity to others. Let's say we actually had that. How many people do you think would want to come and work in that environment? What do you think? Would I have any trouble finding people? I don't think so. I think the more that we facilitate people being the best expression of themselves in service to a greater whole, we'd have a waiting list of people who wanted to come and do service. And we would never have any problem of finding somebody to do things. So you can have a vicious cycle or a virtuous cycle. The problem is to get from here to there. So if you have people that have already been in crisis leadership for the last 30 years, and I had one head of a community who's very interested in introducing this, but he said, I can't do it until I get people to help me. I said, no. First you do this, and then you get the proper people to help you. He says, I have no time. He says, I have no time to look at the classes or look at the book. What do I do first? I said, first you've got to at least look at something to know what it is. Said you have to have enough familiarity with it to introduce it. So crisis management breeds crisis management. And well-ordered management breeds well-ordered management. There is a book I read years ago about a janitorial company that had workers that clean offices. Now, if you clean offices, you're cleaning at night. You know, if you clean people's houses, you're doing it during the day. But you're cleaning offices, you're cleaning at night. How many people do you think really want to clean offices at night? Not very many, right? And they don't get paid a whole lot, so a lot of them can't even afford a car, and they have to go on the bus or the train, and they don't want to travel, you know, especially coming home after they finish cleaning. It's late at night. So they had a huge turnover in this company, absolutely huge turnover, like 80% turnover rate. Once they started actually taking care of their people and helping their people become the best expression of themselves, nobody ever wanted to leave. In fact, they had to say to some people, look, your career trajectory should really take you out of this company. And they had a long waiting list of people who wanted to work there. So if you actually take care of people and help them to be the best expression of themselves, you won't have this kind of problem. Short-term emergency is something else. But be aware that if you do someone else's work, even in a short-term emergency, you are damaging yourself and you are damaging others, even while you externally may be good at the skills. Make sense to everybody? If I'm doing something and the whole time I'm doing it, I'm thinking, I don't want to be doing this. Why isn't someone else doing this? Why do I have to be doing this? Am I going to be a nice person to be around? And if you have a whole community of people who are always irritated, is that going to be a nice community to be part of? So I do sometimes jump in and do other people's work for emergencies, but it's not a good situation for myself or for others. Yeah? It's like, you know, every once in a while you don't get enough sleep. Whatever, there's something comes up and you just can't get enough sleep. But if you're long-term not getting enough sleep, is anyone going to want to be around you? Are you going to want to be around you? Do you follow what I'm saying? Yeah? It's the same kind of thing. Thank you. I never want to bring that up, and I always hope somebody brings that up. Anything else? Yes.
I don't know if this question is proper. So can you explain, what do you think is Duryodhana and Karna, are they in the right field?
Duryodhana and Karna, definitely. However, which ones of these did they not do? Which principles here did Duryodhana and Karna not do? Which of these principles were they violating?
Number 7 and 8?
Definitely 7.
Yeah.
Definitely 7. Karna was really good at number 3. And so was Duryodhana, actually. Duryodhana and Karna were both very, very charitable people. Was their work always ethical? No, they had a real problem with 4. They also had some problem with 5.
So you mean they are in the right field, but they don't do their dharma?
They didn't do it dharmically, yeah. But especially they were really having a problem with 7. And I'd say that they were also having some problem with 6. They were doing some religious rituals, but they weren't actually in connection with their ultimate source. Oh yeah, they were definitely in the right field. So they had number 1 and 2 right. See, most people are just interested in 1 and 2, and 1 and 2 is a big problem in society, but that's not everything. The others are also important. It's just like I say, you can be in your own home, but if you never take care of any trash, if you never fix the plumbing, you never clean out the shower. Any other questions, comments? You can take, yes.
It's like making money in the career since making money in the field of ideas is, you said, is the hardest one.
Well, it can be. There are certain parts of the field of ideas. I mean, there's all different careers in the field of ideas. Some of
Okay.
them it's easier to make a living than others. But certainly in the highly theoretical research parts of that field, it can be difficult because that's work that's not so much understood or appreciated by the rest of society. It's hard to get others to pay for that.
I was wondering whether it was recommended to have maybe 2, one that gives you enough money to sustain yourself, and then
But just make sure it's all in the right field.
both of them in the
So
same.
just make sure you're in the right field.
Okay.
But people in the field of ideas who are interested in the highly theoretical aspects of that field, it is going to be difficult. And there's always going to be a tendency to take money from people in government or resources that's going to skew what you're doing. It's a real struggle for the very abstract theorists in the field of ideas. And often in modern society, they end up working for government or for resources and then struggling to be objective. This is a serious problem. And this is not a minor problem. And without that theoretical work in ideas, it must be done. Because when the theory of ideas gets translated into the practical, you have to have solid theoretical understanding first. People want you to skip that part. But you can't. Does that make sense? I mean, Rukmini and I were really very fortunate. It took us 6 years to write the book. We were fortunate. One of our temples, New Vrindavan, let us stay there for a month without paying anything and without doing anything directly for the community. And then the temple president of the Denver temple and his wife let us stay there, I think, for 3 weeks. And then my oldest son let us stay at his place for 6 weeks and work. So we had people who who facilitated us, that we didn't have to pay them anything, and they gave us their facility, and we could work on the theoretical aspects of this. Then after that, we just worked over Zoom. But it's hard. I mean, when I wanted to develop international curriculum for children, it was very difficult for me to find some place where I could do that. Where I could be, I mean, I didn't want much, just wanted like something to eat and a roof. and Wi-Fi. And Wi-Fi. Without any demands on me, without any other demands. So I was really fortunate. My friend Prana Prabhu, who just recently passed away, he facilitated me in Auckland. So he arranged for me to have a little house on the temple property, and he got the temple president to agree that I didn't have to do anything for the local community, and I could stay as long as I needed. I spent more than half my time there over 2 years. And I was lucky my neighbor, Krishnendu, he let me use his Wi-Fi. And I had some little bit of furniture, and I could look at the ocean, and I could just work. And I had full freedom. Nobody was on my case about anything. But that's unusual. I mean, how do you get that? It wasn't easy. I contacted people all over the world, and they would say, well, not really. If you come here, we expect you to work full-time for our project. Or, we can give you a month. One place said, we'll give you 3 months. So it's a difficult thing. And therefore, it's important in society for people to understand the value of that work. Especially, it's important for the people in the field of government to understand that. That the people that's one of the dharmic principles of the people in government, that they actually provide for the theoretical work in the field of ideas. I mean, if it's practical work in the field of ideas, that's easier. You know, if you're teaching kids, or you're a doctor, or you're, you know, a priest doing yajnas, I mean, that's easier. You're a psychologist, it's much easier to be maintained like that. But see, none of that can happen without the theoretical work being done in the background, you follow? Somebody has to do the theoretical research about education before someone can come in and teach children. Okay, thank you very, very much. Thank you. And they had saved some books. I'm going into Gold Coast tomorrow to the Bhakti Center. So they had saved some books to bring to Gold Coast, but I said, don't do that. If anybody here wants them, just go ahead. So we have some books left here. And this is the last class I'll be giving here, except for there's a special ladies retreat I'll be doing on Sunday. But otherwise, this is the last class I'll be doing here. I'm spending tomorrow, Krishna willing, at the Bhakti Center, coming back late. And then just doing one afternoon program just for ladies, and then leaving on Monday for Brisbane. Thank you all very much for your hospitality. And for tolerating me. And anything good here is from Srila Prabhupada. Anything bad here is mine. Don't even blame my co-author. And any of you who haven't yet gotten a book, we do have. Do we have any Krishna meditations left? We sold out all the Krishna meditations. Okay, so all we have left is career dharmas. Oh, we have a few of the chanting books. So that's a little fun book, illustrated book. How to Chant Without Offense. So if you're interested in that, and cheap too. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. If you got a book and you want me to sign it, I can do that too. And thank you for this water. I had like 2.5 cups. Yes. Personality types according to what?
People, they are part of every field. They have
You have
specific doctrines or personality types. They are kind of
not
common.
really,
They
yeah.
are all spread out
Yeah. I mean,
with different roles.
there's all different ways of measuring personality types, and I haven't seen any of them that have a
Sorry,
one-to-one.
no personality types. Prosperity types.
Oh,
Where
prosperity
you find
types.
correlation